Okay, so welcome to our biannual crabber towboat main agreement meeting. So I want to just remind us that this meeting is about getting together with different ocean user groups and discussing how well these tow lanes are working. That's the impetus. That's the reason why we're getting together. Over the past couple of years that I've joined on and started administering and coordinating this group, we've kind of brought in outside experts to talk, which is why our meetings have gotten longer. They used to be an hour and a half, now they're 3 hours. So we do have lunch coming at around 11:30, 11:45 to try to entice you to stay and have a working lunch with us. So that will be right around just after our break. So what I want to do a little bit differently this time around is do our partner updates first. That's besides the commercial crab in-season update. So we're just going to go around the room, introduce ourselves, share anything that you'd like to that's related to the tow lane, please. You'll see after our partner update, we'll have an update from the Koyukit Nation. That's from Jennifer. Then we'll have more of a detailed discussion if there's any point changes we need to make. This is the time to describe that. Then I'll show you a mapping project that a graduate student at the UW did about this time last year, where she mapped the compliance of tugboats using the tow lane. It's just kind of a cool visual in 2020. How well were those lanes followed? After that, we'll have a short break. Then we'll start talking about in-season Dundee states from Washington, Oregon, and California. Then we'll have a marine weather update. Then a PACCAR Pacific Port Access Route Study update from the Coast Guard. Then BOEM is tuning in to give us an offshore wind activity update. So we're going to try our best to end at 1, but we're going to start the meeting by kind of going around the room and getting to know each other. Anybody online have anything they want to say right now before we dive in? Okay. So why don't we start here?
One just quick point of clarification. Would you want me to go to my whole thing or just introduce myself to people that know who I am?
Go for it.
Go for everything. All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Lieutenant Commander Colin Fogarty. Can everyone can hear me on the phone? I'll speak as loudly as possible and kind of turn around so everyone can see my better side. In short, like I said, my name is Colin Fogarty. I am the enforcement boss for the sector over there at Warrenton. And my job is to ensure that all U.S. regulations that are applicable within both territorial seas and the high seas are enforced, and that we also work to conduct national defense operations as applicable. And one of the reasons I'm here today, the foremost reason I'm here today, is to talk about AIS. Now, this is a 3-hour-long meeting. I don't intend to make it any longer, despite it is my wants to keep talking. But the short of it is this, is that year after year, ever since 2015, the Coast Guard has been very aggressive in our outreach for the use of AIS. AIS is foundational for 2 things: safety and security. It is the foundation of the Coast Guard's maritime domain awareness. It is essential to us protecting this port. Whether we're stopping human trafficking, illegal fishing, drug running, all of that pertains to AIS and AIS's foundation of having a good working knowledge of what is coming into the port and going out of this port. In addition to that, AIS is used for safety, used for collision avoidance. There's no shortage of instances that have been utilized, I should say example, by the fact that AIS does prevent collisions. That's whether it's on bars, whether it's offshore, whether it's between large vessels, small vessels, or large to small. So with that in mind, the Coast Guard is very aggressive in ensuring that AIS is utilized. Over the last 2 years, my division has spent a lot of time, a lot of man hours to do specific outreach to commercial fishermen, specifically for commercial fishermen. I understand the desire to turn off AIS. I understand the reasons, and but for the most part, specifically, for the most part, 96% of people follow those regulations to a T. Like they do, like commercial fishermen follow most regulations. You have very few instances of undersized crab, very few instances of Jones Act violations, very few instances of people turning off their AIS. But as of recently, we've detected about 3% of the fleet that has been turned around. And the Coast Guard, as is our duty, has been enforcing these regulations. And I know that word has been getting out to the fleet about that, and frankly, I like it, right? There's compliance through outreach, and unfortunately, there has to be compliance through deterrence from time to time. And my division has been very forward-leaning in doing both. And to that end, I appreciate Jenna providing me a couple of minutes of this meeting to reach out, discuss our equities, and discuss what we can expect from you guys. Bottom line up front is the safety and security aspects. We need everyone in the fleet to follow these laws, to follow these regulations, because without your compliance, there's no way that we can ensure safety. There's no way we can ensure security. And if we have to go through violations, which from time to time we unfortunately do, we will do that. But that being said, I want to make sure that the fishing fleet has a face to who's doing these things. I'm in charge of multiple stations and multiple divisions. And to that end, we all are involved in executing this mission. And if you have concerns and complaints, I'm happy to work with any individual vessel, happy to work with any individual industry group to discuss our equities and find a way that we can either improve the regulations or ways that we can improve them. So I've talked for about 5 minutes. I can talk for about an hour more, but I won't. At this point, I'll provide myself as a sacrificial lamb for any questions or lamb basins.
I have a question.
Please, ma'am. It is, ma'am. Yes.
But is there anything in the process of getting that changed, or is it set in stone? 50 and 55 seems like, in terms of Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, that's kind of where that line is between the larger boats and the smaller boats. You know, just a question in that regard.
Yes, ma'am. So I'll repeat that question so we can ensure that they heard it on the interwebs. The question is there any movement currently within proposed regulations to change the length requirement for those required to have AIS? The short answer is I'm not aware of any. I've been in touch with the Coast Guard. Mr. Sherman, do you know of anything troubling? I'm looking around the room to some of the smarter folks, and they're shaking their heads. In a conversation I had with NAPSET recently, the regulations are as they are. There's no intention to change them. I'm sure there's a lot of people, both listening on the internet as well as in this room, that like to see them change in one way, shape, or form. I, for one, would also like to see them changed for many reasons. Now, with regard to them being set in stone, we live in a democracy. Nothing is set in stone. If there is an impetus, if there is a desire to change this regulation, the Coast Guard will change it. But I will state that Colin Fogarty cannot do it on his own. I can't do that sua sponte. I need to rely on people that really matter, you guys, to do it. And with that in mind, if you're interested in getting in touch with people that can change those regulations, I am happy to provide you their names.
Sure.
Great. I'll make sure I get with you after my little spiel here, and I'll get you their names, and we can do that. Because, yes, sir.
I was just going to add to that. The beginnings of it as regulations start with IMO, United Nations. Yeah, that's a really slow process.
I would be dead.
So yeah, I won't get into IMO. I won't get into the law of the sea treaty or any of the other outcroppings of that. But I will say that the United States, we're very aggressive in ensuring our own regulations are responsive and reflective of what the American people need. So IMO, I don't want to say they can be damned, but we can do our own thing. And if we want to change how AIS runs, We want to change length requirements. These are all things that can happen. Now, I'm not going to use the term glacial, but it'll move exactly quickly, right? With the most recent iterations of AIS, the initial final rule was proposed in 2013, and we had 2 notice of comment periods, which is a lot, unless you're the EPA. And we had multiple public meetings. So, but I tend to think that if individuals and affinity groups, trade groups have a desired interest to change these regulations, you propose to the Coast Guard, we'll be very receptive in doing it. And I can tell you that when they reach out to the fleet, I will happily provide my input because I have a lot of thoughts on it that I can't relay to you right now. But I would happily, on behalf of the good Captain Jackson, our Second Commander, propose that when they reach out to them. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
I don't know. I mean, it'll be every scrap boat that's licensed in Washington. We'll be looking at that. I'm not sure how Oregon's looking at that right now either, but would there be any benefit to coordinating that with your operations in AIS, or how would that be best?
Yeah, absolutely. So to reiterate for everyone, the gentleman asked a question, rather proposed a comment that it sounds like Washington State is considering putting additional tracking devices on vessels, and whether or not coordination would be beneficial. It's my opinion that very much it would. I know that every commercial fisherman out there, I should say the vast majority of them, have multiple tracking systems. We have VMS, we have AIS. Washington State's considering something else. I, for one, would offer that it would be beneficial that if there's one. Now, again, that's going to take some work between NOAA, individual states, as well as the Coast Guard. But again, unless the trade groups, unless individual fishermen reach out to the Coast Guard and to NOAA and state that there's a better way we can run business, there's a better way we can do this, lessen cost, increase safety, increase security. Let's look into those options. It won't happen. So I'm not familiar with Washington State's current plans. But now that you mentioned it, sir, I'm more than interested. I'm going to have to look into it. Because again, at the end of the day, my job is safety and security. Beyond that, I want fishermen to be able to fish. And I want them to do it in the way that they would like to do it, so as to increase their business. And as long as their business interests don't conflict with my safety and security interests, I want them to do as best as they can. So with that in mind, I'll reach out to it. I'll make sure that NAVCEN, that's the Coast Guard, big Coast Guard headquarters director that's in charge of these regulations, they're also aware of it in case they're not. Because again, if Washington State's doing something creative, something beneficial, we want to know about it because we want to feed, right? We're lazy. We want to let other people do the hard work. So to that point, to that end, of course I'm joking, but to that point, to that end, thank you for bringing that up, and I will look into it. Ensure it's related to the people that matter.
Yeah.
I see that Mr. Washington. I'm sorry, Larry. I'm sorry. Hey, Larry, you have a question for me, sir?
Well, relative to the idea of trying to coordinate what might be potentially new tracking systems, as Mr. Beasley pointed out, the state of Washington is planning as of today to have a electronic monitoring plan or protocol or program in place for the 23-24 season. So it's not a hypothetical, it's happening. And it's my understanding, and maybe someone else can speak to this, that California is also proposing to have an electronic monitoring system in place for the 23-24 season. I am not familiar with what they are specifically going to require, but this process is beyond discussion phase. I mean, there's still plenty of discussion going on, but those are objective goals in those two states at this time. So certainly if you're going to reach out, it would be prudent, and timing is probably important. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. I was looking at Mr. Chris German. In short, he's the district fisheries manager. And he seems more than aware of those current efforts. So I'm going to make sure I speak with him afterwards. If Mr. German's aware of it, I presume NAVCENT is also aware of it, but I will do my due diligence and relay that back to our headquarters folks.
I'm currently on 12 vessels in the fleet and still kind of in the testing phase, but like Larry said, we're gearing up for the 23-24 season for all vessels.
Great. Yeah.
I can get you contact information for Robert Morgan. He's our lead for that project.
Thank you, man. Yeah, I would appreciate that.
I have a question for you. Just to clarify, what is the point of running a separate monitoring system on it for your fisheries? Not an AI.
So it's a lot of different issues, such as, you know, it helps with enforcing violations, top theft issues, just making sure our catch areas are being reported properly, to enforce like SMA.
So it's more designed to help you guys monitor what the fleet's doing, how they're working. But
yeah,
that's separate from ID safety necessarily.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
And then the systems have to be, it has to be smooth. So this is similar to a VMS system kind of thing, you know, called electronic monitoring VMS. And so that's similar to NOAA's VMS system that is a locked black box. You know, kind of break the seal, alarms go off kind of thing. And for the enforcement side, it has to be very resistant to spoofing. But AIS, you can change stuff on that.
Okay.
Anyway, that's it.
Okay, that makes sense. Just curious on that. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Is it going to be satellite or is it going to be VHF? Is it AIS or VMS? I mean, we already have AIS, VMS. This is the third thing we're going to have to put on, or we're going to be able to use our VMS. And you guys can link into that database.
No, it's an additional system, so it connects to your hydraulics. So we get a hydraulic signature on top of a track line signature as well. So I believe it's off of satellite, but don't. So yeah, don't.
They're working towards cell systems. I don't know if this system for sure. You know, they're still kind of working through it.
Yeah, so we get a certain ping rate every so many minutes, like track line data, and then also on the hydraulic signature pings every like 10 seconds, I believe is what they have it set up.
I can't speak to Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife because Kelly Corbett, who's my boss, wasn't able to be here because of conflict. But I'm not sure where things stand, but I think Oregon might be going in that direction as well.
The Washington requirement is responding to marine mammal entanglement concerns, and it's also kind of deprecating the logbook. The intention is to replace it, so it's going to collect fishery effort data in terms of where pots are pulled and timing, things like that. So it's kind of a multi. It's resolving multiple things, kind of all at the same time. But it is, as Jamie, who's more aware of me, is a separate system, but the need is really coming from our MMA and NEPA requirements as part of the conservation plan that's going on the coast.
Okay, Larry, you get the last one.
Well, I wasn't angling for that. I did want to say though that in addition to benefits we hope relative to the incidental take permit on whale entanglement issues, that this is a necessary tool for Washington relative to catch sharing with the tribal sovereigns on the coast. There's been doubt between the co-managers on the veracity of catch reporting areas and catch reporting, and this is also intended to help be more robust and more accurate in those details of our fishing activity. I just thought I'd mention that.
Thank you, sir. And I see Mr. Goodell also.
Yeah, good morning. My name is Junior Goodell. I'm a tribal fisherman out of Westport. I'm enrolled in the Quinault Indian Nation, but picking up on this AIS discussion, is the intention for the lawmakers to weave the AIS requirement into existing federal regulations or into a statute somewhere? And also, at what point will government to government consultations happen with treaty tribes, including the Quinault Indian Nation? Thanks.
I can speak a little bit to that, sir. At this point, my understanding is that when Congress promulgated the requirement that the Coast Guard implement AIS regulations, Congress left it at that. They have yet to really weigh in beyond the congressional record of the law that was passed in 2011, beyond their desire that the Coast Guard utilize AIS for collision avoidance as well as maritime domain awareness. It's just a fancy word for security. Since then, I haven't seen anything from Congress revisiting them. So I don't believe that they are going to, at this point, and again, I'm always hesitant to speak for Congress. That being said, I haven't seen any indicia that they intend to move forward with codifying our regulations in statute or into giving us rudder commands to adjust our regulations. That being said, if you think that things should change, you can always reach out to the Coast Guard. We have the ability to change our own regs. And then you can always reach out to your congressman if you feel that's more apropos, and engage directly with them if you think things need to happen at that level. So.
Okay, thanks. If I could follow up.
Please.
The AIS discussion right now it's not to change the policy. Is that what you just said?
Yeah, that's correct, sir. I'm more or less here to say that I'm enforcing the laws that have been around since 2015.
I see. Okay. All right. I guess I got confused when you were discussing small boats versus big boats and requiring smaller boats to level up to AIS. So, okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir. All right, I'm not seeing any other hands in the room or online. Much easier than I thought it was going to be. Appreciate your kindness. Beyond that, if you guys do have any follow-up questions, concerns, I know that most of the fishing vessels are actually out there conducting the business as we speak. If you're in touch with anyone, they want to get in touch with me, you can simply have them call up the sector. They have my number on speed dial, believe me. And they will put you in touch with me and we can have a conversation. I sincerely appreciate everyone's time, particularly Jenna's. I know you have a lot of other important things to discuss. Thank you for giving me the time that you gave me.
Okay, so since that took a little bit longer than I expected.
He is a lawyer.
So instead of going around the room, I'd like to invite people to raise their hand if they have partner updates that they'd like to share. So we'll start in the room and then we'll go online. So anybody have updates?
So yeah, this is Chris Sherman, Coast Guard as well, and actually AIS tie-in, I think. So AIS on fishing gear, I know that's come up in here a couple times. Congress in the National Defense Authorization Act back in December told the Coast Guard stop enforcing the prohibition against AIS on fishing gear. It's an FCC regulation. They said stop enforcing that for the next 2 years while the FCC gets new regulations in place. So as of December, we're prohibited from doing anything about AIS and fishing gear. And again, that's just a temporary deal that Congress reached in and said, just stop while FCC gets their stuff figured out. So I expect you'll see probably some more of that coming up in the future, is more AIS and fishing gear, which whether or not you think it's a good thing or bad thing, it keeps people from running over fishing gear and leaves fishing gear in the water. And if a whale gets in it, you can track the whale. But anyway, so just so you're aware of that. And then back on the tow lane bit, just it's just letting you know that I do annual training with all of our stations and patrol boats, and really been pushing the tow lanes out, saying, hey, you don't want to come back with stuff wrapped on your appendages. Use these lanes, particularly at night. And so we are doing that more when we can. Obviously, search and rescue, law enforcement case or something, we're just going to go straight towards it, fastest route. But otherwise, they're all aware they're putting those in their plotters. I don't know why it took us 50 years to make sure we're doing that, but we are making sure annually they are aware of those. Our people change out routinely. And then the other one is just a note, I suppose, for the commercial fishermen in the States. We also have established a procedure for when we do come in with dragging gear, and we have tags. There's a limited, you only get 300 tags, I think, right? Whatever, there's a limited number of tags for each pot. And when we find that gear on our pots or on our equipment, we return that. So we get a hold of Oregon State Police, Washington Fish and Wildlife. We return that tag so the fishermen can get that pot back in the water. And we also provide a damage claim form where if they choose, they can say, hey, Coast Guard, you damaged my equipment, same as if the government damages anything, that they can get reimbursed for that. So there is a procedure for that, and we will continue doing that. And then also when the public reports it into us, we get those tags and we will get those back to the states to enable that fisherman to get that extra pot in the water and make some money off that pot. So anyway, just wanted to add those two pieces. Any questions, please let me know. Again, Chris Sherman with Coast Guard. Yeah.
One really quick question or statement on that is we work with for the country of Bar Island.
Yep.
We work with a number of towing companies out of Canada. And until recently, they were unaware of our towing lanes and their locations. So we started giving them the information that we have on those tow lanes. I don't know if there's a way for you guys to reach out to your Canadian counterparts and say, hey, by the way, up in Washington, there are these towing lines that should not have crab glass if you were allowed to use.
Yeah, I think there's probably a mechanism to reach out to Transport Canada and provide that somehow with them. So yeah. We'll work with John and the waterways management folks, and we can figure that piece out. That may kind of crosses in between our lanes. John and I work different angles, but okay. This one meets in the middle. So anyway,
we just had a couple of them come in and go, yeah, we got a lot of guys on this. I'm sure why.
Yeah. Perfect. All right, and then that's John Moriarty with the Coast Guard Waterways Management.
They have a trouble with your stuff.
Yeah. The website is in French. It's in English. Okay, and that's all I've got.
What other updates, Dale? Yeah. This is all related to towing.
This is has to do relative to the AIS of fishing here. Gear specifically. Kind of prohibitive. And the other thing is that yesterday I spent all day at the Washington Coastal Marine Advisory Council, and that group was extremely slow to recognize the potential of U.S. Coast Guard fairways being installed on the coast of Washington. Just an FYI, and I'll continue to work to bring those to the forefront, but it's been with extreme difficulty so far.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room with things you'd like to share? Remind people that when it's needed to sign in on that little sheet of paper. Larry, go ahead.
This is just a clarifying question. So I can't see the agenda, and I apologize if one was sent. I don't have it in front of me. So there is going to be within this meeting a specific discussion of the PACPAR's proposal as amended and procedures going forward relative to that. That's all I wanted to know, if that's yet to be an item to discuss. That's all. Thank you.
Yep, Larry, I'll share my screen so you can see the agenda. That'll be after lunch.
Yeah, thank you. That's all I needed to know.
Okay, so time for the online folks to talk. You can raise your hand if you've got an update you'd like to share. Okay, I'm not seeing any hands raised, so let's go into talking about the Quileute lander moorings. So Jennifer, you're up.
Do I have the ability to share screen?
Sure.
Oh, gotta turn the chat off. Let me see. So good morning, everybody. I'm not going to be too long on this. I just have a project that I wanted to share with everybody and possibly get some input too. This project is called Backyard Buoys, and it was awarded $4.9 million. It's a cooperative agreement with the National Science Foundation geared towards improving ocean data access for Indigenous communities. And our partners in the Northwest region is the Quinault Nation, the Quileute Tribe, and Northwest Association of Networked Ocean Observing Systems. And what it is we're going to be deploying several wave sensors to help improve our understanding of ocean conditions and perhaps improve safety. That is the main reason for this. This is the geography for the entire program. The areas in orange are the Pacific Rim groups that we're meeting with. We had our first meeting was last summer up in Barrow. And so it goes all the way far to the south to Samoa, to the Marshall Islands, to Alaska, and then here in the Northwest. So can you see, are you seeing my desktop okay? Okay, so you never know because everything changes when you start being a presenter. Right now, we're geared towards understanding how waves impact flooding in Tahola and La Push, as well as the factor of helping fishermen know what the actual wave conditions are outside the harbors, because as most of you, I'm sure, are aware, the closest source is the Cape Elizabeth buoy that has wave height on it, and the IUS or the OOI moorings that are located down by ocean shores. So the idea here is we're inside, the red lines are depicting the tribal special management areas. So we are going to be putting them inside those special management areas that are for crab fishing, but we're pretty much staying inside that contour. The depths are going to be 25 to 40 meter depths. And these are small enough. Here's a schematic of them. They're small enough that we can deploy them and recover them from small boats. which is kind of nice because as someone who's involved in some of the bigger moorings that are out there, having to wait for a vessel large enough to lift railroad wheels can be a exercise in patience sometimes. But these will be able to go off a small boat. We're still trying to figure out how much weight we need to put on them. As you can see down here, we're trying to keep it 80 pounds so that it's easy to pull them up with like a crab pot puller. We're still thinking about this design here with all this in the water column and what it might mean for whales and sea turtles. That's a discussion to be had. But I just wanted to see if you guys wanted to provide any comment on what this is a pretty small little device that's sitting in the water. So if you're going along in a boat, could be tricky to see. We will be sharing the final coordinates with folks once we do deploy them. So you'll be able to put that in your plotters. And otherwise, the key thing here, if you have more questions or comments, either contact Joe Schumacher or myself. And thank you for your time. If anybody has any questions. Right, can't hear anybody, can't find.
Junior,
Sorry, I can't hear you and I can't find my, oh, there we go. Stop sharing. Okay.
can you hear me now?
I think I heard my name, Junior Goodell. Thanks, Jennifer, for your presentation there. I wonder, I'm kind of concerned about obstructing access to existing fishing areas, particularly probably like salmon trawlers up in that area during the spring and summer months. What is the timing on deployment of these buoys, and what conversations have been had about potentially obstructing access for certain methods of fishing, namely salmon trolling or bottom fishing? Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Junior. So right now we're in the part of the process where we're getting our permits, because we have to go through a permit process with the state and the feds. Depending on if they're in state waters or not, we'll have to get a series of permits that are associated with state jurisdiction. And then in the federal waters, Army Corps of Engineers and NOAA Fisheries. But certainly we do not want to put these in a place where we would be having a negative impact on fisheries. So I would say that, talk with Joe to see that area off of Tahola, how well that is utilized during the salmon trawl fishery. I know I see the salmon trawl vessels out there, but usually when I see them, they're out further and not that close to shore. But yeah, there's still the opportunity to have impact on the actual locations. Part of our criteria is try to cite them so they can provide the most information about flooding within the communities, as well as oceanographically giving us the best location for how the bottom topography and currents work in the location, so that we can extract the most information.
Okay, thanks, Jennifer.
Jennifer, there's a question in the chat about how many will be deployed.
Thanks, I closed my chat. right now we're going to be deploying 3 and Quinault are going to be deploying 3. That's what we're starting with. There's the potential to put more, but then that just means it would be more management. And the idea here is that fishermen can deploy these and pick them up. So there'll be, you know, it'll take a little bit of management. We don't want people arbitrarily pulling them up, but the idea is that this is designed by the community for the community. So it's the fishermen in at Quinault and in La Push that are actually having a role in determining where these are going to go.
We say that once more.
They have an AIS transfer.
I did not hear that.
Why is there not an AIS transmitter on the buoys?
You know, we're going to have communications on them. So they are going to be sending a data stream, but no, we have not. I know some of the moorings out there do have AIS on them, but that the cost is probably that's something that we just haven't budgeted for yet. But something for discussion, especially in light of what I just heard the Coast Guard say about they're not enforcing on fishing gear that has AIS on it. So it looks like the landscape is changing a bit out there as far as AIS goes.
Thanks, Jennifer. That, yeah, you're correct. We would not have any issue with that. No. Actually, legally can't have any issue with it. So good to go. And those aren't all that expensive. I'll see if I can get some information on it. Maybe send it to you offline. Just kind of what those transmitters look like and how much it'd be for it.
Yeah, part of the expenses with AIS in the past was that FCC requires a certain level of AIS systems, where the stuff we've seen out on fishing gear is mostly, I think, stuff you can purchase off of Amazon that doesn't cost very much, but it doesn't satisfy FCC's criteria for robustness. So it'd be nice to learn more about where we are currently on that.
Junior, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Jennifer. I wonder, you mentioned the permitting from the Corps of Engineers and any applicable state agency. Is there currently like an environmental review happening with SEPA or NEPA? Is that one of the stages that you guys are at right now?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. I wonder, is there going to be there must be an option to comment on those findings at some point?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of how, I mean, all the permits, once the JARPA, it's joint aquatic, anyways, permit process that you have to go through to locate things. Once we get to the other side and we've had conversations with federal and state managers, then the permit language and locations stuff gets in more final form, and then there's an opportunity for review.
Okay, thank you.
But I really encourage you to go talk with Joe Schumacher too.
Any questions for Jennifer? Yep, Larry?
Yeah, Jennifer, I know there's a litany of permits you have to go through in order to have this activity. I just wondered, is the Marine Sanctuary, the administration of the Marine Sanctuary, also then a permitting entity relative to the buoy placements?
Absolutely, yeah.
Thank you.
There is a list, yeah. There'll be a permit applied for from the sanctuary. It kind of comes all under this JARPA umbrella, trying to expedite or streamline the process, where all your federal permits, you know, because there's EFH considerations and as well as sanctuary, and so yeah, they'll all be getting copies of the information. The ones I'm putting out are outside state waters, but I think the ones that Quinault are putting in are potentially within state waters. So they're going to have a little bit more work than I will.
Thank you.
Okay, so shockingly, we're ahead of schedule. So I'd like to take a minute to do some introductions. So I think let's just go around the room and say our names and our affiliation, and then we'll go on to the Zoom room, just so we all know who's here. So go ahead, Dale.
Washington. Several other just to mention.
This is Commander Brendan Harris with the U.S. Coast Guard out of Seattle for District 13 Waterways Management Branch. Thanks for having me today.
Good afternoon, everyone. David Berliner, Coast Guard Waterways. I work out of our Portland office, which will soon be where the sector will be located. Thank you.
Morning, John Moriarty with Coast Guard District 13 Waterways Management.
Morning, Steve Ackerman with the Columbia River Bar Pilots.
And Dan Jordan with the Columbia River Bar Pilots.
Pete Saul, fishing vessel Rocky B.
Casey Johnson, Briscoe Tug and Barge.
Jill Smith, Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, port biologist for Astoria.
Chris Sherman, Coast Guard Fisheries out of Seattle, covered Washington and Oregon.
Jamie Fultner, Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife, out of our Montesano office.
We're going to do Dale once more.
Can you hear me now? I have this problem. I had to go last night to a meeting and they put the mic right in front of me too. So my name is Dale Beasley. I'm president of the Columbia River Crab Fishermen's Association and the Coalition of Coastal Fishers and a member of the Washington Coastal Marine Advisory Council, among several other.
Great, thanks. So now I'm going to go around the Zoom room, but Larry. Larry, if you can hear me, can you introduce yourself?
Oh, sorry, I had to quiet a dog. My name is Larry Thievick. I'm the president of the Washington Dungeness Crab Fishermen's Association, like Dale. I'm also a member of the Washington Coastal Marine Advisory Council, and I'm also a member of the Grays Harbor Safety Committee.
Thanks, Larry. Jennifer, why don't you go again?
Yeah, I didn't really introduce myself earlier. Jennifer Hagan, I'm the Marine Policy Advisor with the Quileute Tribe in La Push.
Thanks, Jennifer. Trina.
Good morning, everyone. Trina Jensen, National Weather Service at the Weather Forecast Office in Portland.
Thanks, Trina. Mike Rudolph.
Good morning, everybody. This is Mike Rudolph with the Coast Guard Fishing Vessel Safety out of the Portland office.
Thanks, Mike. Bridget.
Hey everyone, Bridget Trosen with Washington Sea Grant, a coastal policy specialist and fisheries and boating team lead.
Thanks, Bridget. Alden.
Hi everyone, my name is Alden Lundy.
Hey Alden, you kind of broke up a little bit, so we're going to come back to you. Daniel Sund.
Hi everyone, I'm Daniel Sun. I'm the Puget Sound Commercial Crustacean Fishery Manager. I'm here to kind of learn about this issue and how it's addressed in the coastal side. We have similar issues in Puget Sound. So.
Thanks, Daniel. Christy.
Hi, I'm Christy Uhas. I work with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife on our California Indigenous crab fishery.
Thanks, Christy. John. John Venture?
Yeah, John Venture. I'm joining. Just got to get those buttons. I'm the past executive director of the Marine Exchange, and also past as of February, the past chairman of the Harbor Safety Committee. And I'm just on the meeting to listen and see what I can learn. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Anne.
Hi, I'm Ann Skelton. I'm with the Pacific County Marine Resources Committee.
Thanks, Anne. Brad.
Hey, I'm Brad Trammell. I'm with the American Waterways Operators. We're the National Trade Association for the tugboat and barge industry, and I'm headquartered in our DC office.
Brad, can you say that last bit once more?
Yeah, I was just saying I'm located in our DC office.
Okay, thanks. Jeffrey.
Morning, I'm Jeff Ferguson. I'm with NOAA's Office of Coast Survey. I'm the California Navigation Manager and Acting Navigation Manager for Oregon and Washington.
Thanks, Jeffrey. And do you go by Jeff or Jeffrey?
Jeff, but my email is jeffrey.ferguson, so I try not to confuse people.
Okay, thanks. Nick. Nick Preston, can you introduce yourself if you can hear us? Okay, Junior.
Yeah, hello everybody. My name is Junior Goodell. I'm a tribal member of the Quinault Indian Nation. I'm also a commercial fisherman. I have the fishing vessel Pacific Rooster, excuse me. I'm just here to out of curiosity, just to listen and learn. Thanks.
Thanks, Junior. Sam.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Sam Borth, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service in Seattle.
Thanks, Sam. And Bob.
Good morning, Bob Eder, fishing vessel Jimmy Boy operating out of Newport, and I sit on the Oregon Dungeness Crab Commission.
Great, thanks. And I guess I haven't introduced myself, so I'm turning on my video. I'm Jenna Keaton. I work for Washington Sea Grant, and I'm the coordinator of the Crabber Towboat Lane Agreement group. Okay, so Alden, we'll go back to you.
Hi, can you hear me this time?
Yeah.
Perfect. Hi, I'm Alden Lundy. I'm with the Pacific region and the renewable energy section, here to give the update. Great to be here.
Thanks, Alden. Okay, for those online, is our audio any better? We developed a new strategy.
It is much better when you're holding the mic. Thank you.
Okay, good. Okay, so next on our list is to talk about how the tow lanes are working for everybody. So this is the chance to bring up any potential changes in location or issues that you've seen. So this is the time to bring up those points. So as a reminder, we get together every 6 months to figure out if we need to change the tow lanes. We do have that flexibility to change the GPS points, the latitude and longitude. And we can do that within the existing proposed fairway structure that we'll talk about a little bit later. And it's perfectly fine if we don't have any changes.
Hey, Jada. Just from the perspective of the crab fleet locally here, I don't think there's any concerns right now. And I think they've been working relatively well. I tried to get a couple guys here today, but they said they're going fishing today instead.
Thanks, Dale. So it seems like the tow lanes are working for the crab fishermen. Larry, go ahead.
Yeah, I would concur from what I gleaned from being on the shoreline anymore, that the tow lanes continue to work reasonably well, considering their voluntary agreements. I did want to just mention, and I'm not advocating a change, but you know, our seasons have been opening later and later, at least off of most of the Washington coast for the state crab fleet, for a number of reasons, from domoic acid events to tribal obligations to crab condition, and it does potentially cause some some conflict when we move to the summer lanes, and when the season opens considerably later, the opportunity for crabbers to fish where the summer lanes then would become active, you know, is diminished. And it's just something to consider. I am not advocating any change. I just wanted to mention that. Thank you.
Thanks, Larry. So you're talking about potentially moving the summer lanes, the dates of the summer lanes back a little bit? Hey, Larry, can you hear me?
Oh, yes. Again, I am not, you're right. I would, if there were to be a change, it would be relative to when the summer lanes were put into place under certain circumstances. But again, I am not advocating that change at this meeting. I just wanted people to be aware of that. I think we've talked a little bit about it previously. And so I'm just asking to put that on the table to be potentially considered in the future, but not an advocation for change right now.
Okay, understood. Thanks. Any other thoughts, maybe from any towboat operators in the room or online, how these tow lanes are working for you? Yep, I'm gonna bring you this mic, okay?
I think the tow lanes are working great. One issue that we deal with a lot is the gear, the fishermen that are fishing in the lane. And we do our best to avoid the crab gear, but it's, you know, at nighttime, you have a barge behind you, can't always dodge strings of gear. So I don't know how what we do about it, but it is a challenge and we do our best to stay out of the gear.
Yeah. I mean, my view on that, because I fish a lot of deep water and along the edge of the tow lanes and everything else, and I count on you guys being in the lanes and I stay out of them. And if guys fish in the lanes, it's their tough luck. That's the risk they take. They know they're there. They set in there. If you catch some of their gear, it's on them, not you.
Yeah, along with those lines, I'm Dan Jordan with the Bar Pilots. We do see crab gear in the entrance channel to the Columbia River. And some of the boats that are fishing in there actually will go park by them and block the path to protect their gear, which creates a hazard if we're maneuvering ships. That's going on. But on the whole, I would say the crab fishermen are doing a great job, and we appreciate their efforts.
Yeah, this is kind of similar to what we heard at our last meeting, that there might just be an opportunity for some education for the crab fleet. So I think that's something that we at Sea Grant can do. We can partner maybe with you, Jill, and you, Jamie, to try to get out some sort of flyer or some sort of outreach and education piece. Because maybe folks just don't know about the tow lanes. Do you think that could be a potential? Yeah, okay. Yeah.
We could maybe volunteer Mike Rudolph with our the commercial fishing vessel safety program. He gets out and sees in his office, sees a lot of boats as they're doing their safety inspections. And that might be something to link him in as well. I don't want to speak for him since he's there. Maybe he has something to add, but I'll toss him under the bus. Why not? Yeah. Mike will.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. That was wonderful. Well done. Hey, when we do safety exams, we do bring up the crabber towboat lanes from time to time. I know years ago, there was a number of thumb drives that was made available, and we helped distribute some of those. But you know, it's worthwhile to have a continued discussion about it, and sure, we can continue to spread the word on that.
Thanks, Mike. I think I'm going to reach out to you, Jamie Fuller and Jill Smith, to try to get something out. So in terms of the thumb drives, is that the best format to get the tow lane information out to fishermen? Okay. Jill said she hasn't had a fisherman ask for any other format besides a thumb drive, so we'll get.
I would say the Washington Sea Grant website has various downloads, different kind of navigation software.
Okay. Okay. So it seems like
Good way.
for the folks online, it seems like the thumb drives. For the folks online, it seems like the thumb drives and the Washington Sea Grant website with links to the tow lanes are working pretty well. Junior, do you have a thought?
Yeah, thanks. Kind of more of a question. It seemed like this part of the conversation is more focused on the fishermen steering clear of the tow lanes, but I was out in the ocean about a week ago, and I heard some bay fishermen on the radio having an argument back and forth with a towboat, an outbound tug and barge on both channels 13 and 16. And what I concluded was that the towboat was operating beyond the bounds of the navigational channel. And he even admitted that in the radio and explained that he is now back in his lane. And so, you know, we avoid the towboat lanes as much as possible when we gill net and when we're crab fishing. But what about the other side of it with the towboat operators themselves? How are they getting this information? And I think Larry mentioned that this is a voluntary program, and so compliance with these tow lanes on both sides, the fisherman's side, the towboat operator, I think just general marine traffic as well. How is all that information getting to all of the interested parties and made aware of for everybody to fully understand all of this? Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Junior. I'm walking towards Casey Johnson, who might have a good answer for you.
What I usually do every year, I'll call Washington Sea Grant to see if there's any changes that have been made. And for me, I have friends and family that are crab fishermen, so I'm talking with them as well. But on our vessels, we use Rose Point, and we can go, into Washington Sea Grant and get download the tow lanes. And it's very simple. It goes right onto the Rose Point navigation. And that's works great.
So Casey, do you think there could be opportunity for us to educate other folks in the tugboat industry? Yep.
Everyone that I associate with other towboat companies, they all know about the tow lanes, all the West Coast companies, Sauce Brothers, Kirby, Dunlap, everyone operate on the coast. They all know about it. I can see that you could have an issue with an East Coast tugboat coming over here and not being familiar with the tow. They just getting spreading the word to other tugboats. So I think just getting the word out to both companies.
Great. So sounds like we've got some work to do to get the word out a little bit to the tugboat companies. Jennifer, your hand is raised. Well, before I go to Jennifer, Junior, did that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, appreciate that, Jenna.
Okay. All right, Jennifer, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say it seems like an opportune moment for Sea Grant staff to engage and educate with both sectors, the tow boat operators as well as the fishers. It's always good to have, the Sea Grant personnel that are out there in the field knowing the community which they're engaging with. So handing off a jump drive seems like a good icebreaker anyway.
Yep, that's a great idea. Okay, any other comments from, yep, Dan?
I just had another thought. That there's a confusion I'm hearing on the radio quite often, articulating tugs and barges, it's a tugboat attached to a barge, pushing the barge. Their AIS says towboat on it. So as they're learning about the towboat lanes, they're not actually towing and dragging a tow cable, picking up all the gear. So we're doing our best to educate the companies that are operating those, and they're trying to stay in the lanes a little bit more. But they really didn't fall under the original intent of the agreement. And I just thought I'd throw that out because there's two sides of that story.
Anything else on how the tow lanes are working or not working? Yep.
I'd like to put some input in because I think 3 times this season now, I've given tugboats your website so they can go on and get the lanes. They didn't know anything about them. They were like, oh, but there's a few tugs out there out of Canada that I repeatedly have to deal with that don't want to stay in the lanes, act like they don't know what's going on. I've talked to their office. I've called their office before. They know, they're still not. I think it depends on the operator. Some of them do good, some of them don't. But there's all kinds of confusions. People don't realize it's voluntary on the fisherman's part. There's people think that ships are supposed to be in them and yell at ships because they're not in the lanes, which they don't have to be. But there's a lot of people that just aren't aware. They don't know where to get the information. They don't know they exist. They, like you say, the push tugs, they don't know that they're exempt. So these poor guys are getting screamed at out there in the middle of the night. So it's just an education thing. And I don't know how you educate the fishing fleet other than everybody has to have a logbook. So when they get their logbook, you get a sheet that tells you how it all works. But a lot of these tugs they just don't know. And once you give them the website, then they put it on and they follow it. So, but there's 2 ways they get dealt with out there. They either get educated or they get screamed at. And nobody likes getting screamed at. That's my 2 cents.
Would you say that the website's easy to follow?
Yeah, I mean, it's tedious if you go on the website on your phone on the water and you start trying to manually enter these points into your plotter. It's pretty tedious, but you can at least do it for where you're at to get you the heck out of there without going through deep here, you know. And a lot of times, if you just move half a mile and steered this quarter, you got outside a certain depth, you're going to miss everything. And we get it a lot. Well, I was in the lane. There was deer in the lane. I came out of the lane trying to avoid deer. I hear that all the time. And it's like, no, stay in the lane. The guys that fish in the lane, roll the dice. So the guys that don't fish in the lane would appreciate it if we could feel somewhat safe. So.
Okay. That makes sense. All right. Well, thanks everybody for your comments. I don't know if you can tell, but I'm typing away at my computer and I'm taking notes. So I'm going to send my notes out to everybody before I finalize them to make sure I'm capturing everything correctly. Can you remind me of your name again?
Oh, Pete Saul.
Pete Saul. Okay. Okay, Rocky B. So yeah, thanks, Pete. I appreciate it. Okay, so the next agenda item we have is sharing this mapping project that I mentioned at the top of the meeting. You might have remembered that I shared something about this maybe a year ago. We had a graduate student who mapped tow lane compliance. And I just wanted to share with you what this looks like and also share with you the web page so that you can look at this yourself. Let's see. Okay, so this is what the website looks like. You can see that there are the year-round tow lanes and the summer tow lanes in different colors. And this was an exercise in pulling AIS vessel traffic data from 2020. And Leslie was the student. She plotted vessel traffic by month. And so it's just kind of fun to play around with seeing, you know, the warmer colors here are where there was more traffic and the lighter colors are where there was less traffic. And so it's kind of fun to see how folks used different parts of the tow lanes or maybe didn't use different parts of the tow lane. So this was an exercise in kind of getting an overall sense of compliance. There wasn't a quantitative assessment of the % of compliance. It's more of a visual tool. But I would encourage you to look at this. Maybe this would be a good education tool for the towboats out there. Yeah, I just wanted to show you this. This was a lot of work, a lot of computer work that Leslie did. This was funded by the National Working Waterfront Network graduate student internship opportunity. So I will share this map site with you in the meeting minutes. So just wanted you to be aware that this exists. While I have it open, does anyone want me to click on a certain month to look at tow lane compliance? Tugboat traffic? Sure, look at February. This is the lane, so it looks like people are using that year-round lane.
So is this just tracking towboats?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. Okay. Oh, Larry, I see your hand.
Yeah, I just wondered, could you show April 1 through 15 and then April 15 through 30, the difference in what the activity might have been moving to the summer lanes?
Yep.
Is this just any AIS signal that is tugboat? So it could be a light towboat as well?
Does the number 31, 32, and 52 mean anything to you? Okay. Those are the vessel codes.
AIS codes. That's AIS code. Okay. 31.
31 tow, 32 tow, and 52 tug. So Larry, this is April 1 through 15. So that's the year-round lane. So pretty good compliance. And now we're switching into the summer lanes with this green. So not great.
No, it might be helpful. It might be helpful since Oregon has put in place a 40 fathom line starting on May 1st. That's of last year. Be nice to see that line on that map. If it's possible.
The 40 fathom line?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean?
It means the pots have to be inside fathoms starting May 1st to the end of the season.
Later season.
It's a whale entanglement reason. Yeah.
That'd be worth, because it's a new permanent rule. Right?
Yep.
So,
well, actually, no.
Sorry.
That's a question.
Oh, yeah. I just wonder if that, I can't remember if that rule is permanent or temporary, the 40 fathom May 1.
It's temporary, but it's going to be presented at the at a commission meeting soon, I believe next winter, and have it be presented as a possible permanent rule, along with potentially some others.
Okay, just asking because Jenny, you might want to put that like on a once it's permanent, that might be something to reflect and change the lanes, have a seasonal change May 1st when all Oregon gear goes inside 40. We'd actually appreciate just being at 42, 43 fathoms and sweeping that gear. Or attempted humor failed, but anyway.
Yeah.
But if you moved, we could probably move the lanes in if anybody wanted to change their track lines or whatever. I think based on once that becomes permanent, I wouldn't do it until then, but just a thought.
Thanks. Casey, as the in-room tugboat person here, what does this make you think? Do you have any thoughts?
Sorry to see here, but it looks like a lot of movement through the lanes out west.
Yeah. Do you think your colleagues would bother looking at this map?
It'd be great to share.
Yep. Okay. Great. I've got this to-do list that I'm growing over here. Okay, great. Any other comments before we move on from this mapping project? Okay, so we are still ahead of schedule. Lunch is coming in about 7 minutes. So I would suggest we take a little bit of a break until lunch gets here, and then we'll jump into the state agency updates. After that, we'll have the marine weather update, then the port access route update from the Coast Guard, and then we'll finish out with BOEM's update on offshore wind. Does that sound all right to everybody? Yep, take a little break. Okay, break time. Thanks, everyone. We'll check back in at about 11:40, which is about 15 minutes from now. Okay, folks online, we are getting ready to start again. So, I know, back to work. Yeah. Alrighty. So now we are up to the agenda item for our commercial Dungeness crab in-season updates. So we've got Jamie Fuller from Washington, Jill Smith from Oregon, and Christy. You're gonna have to help me with your last name pronunciation, Christy.
It's Juhas.
Juhas. Okay, thank you. From California. So we'll go north to south, and we'll start with Jamie.
Yeah, so our fishery got started kind of late this year with the soft crab. So we opened our south coast, south of Clipson Beach on February 1st and north of Clipson all the way up to the Canadian border on the 6th of February. We've still seen a pretty good volume year. We're currently at 14.3 million pounds have been caught so far, and with a excess of value of 31 million. We got quite a bit of price reduction this year from last season. So even though the volume is still up, our accessible value is quite a bit lower because we're only seeing about an average of $2 per pound for crab. So it's similar to last year, just not price. But I don't really have much more. Great.
This is Jill Smith. Talking about clams, which is what the crabs eat, which is what causes them to accumulate domoic acid in their viscera. So we have some hot spots along the Oregon coast still that are above the threshold for safe eating, which also equates into making sure that the crab are safe to eat, which has been a big influence in terms of the price. Not the only thing, because there's a challenge of if the crab if the threshold for the domoic acid is above that limit, then there's a potential for a recall for that crab, and nobody wants to do that. So it's been pretty stressful for a lot of departments as well as the fishermen and the processors. So they'll be continuing to test the crab pretty vigorously until the domoic acid levels in the clams come down below the threshold. The derelict gear program that we had last summer, we had two programs. One was sponsored by the Oregon Dungeness Crab Commission, where the commission hired one boat in various ports to go out and look for gear, which was, semi-successful. Getting the gear, they had to get the gear from 40 fathoms out. They weren't looking for any lost gear inside 40 fathoms. Then we had the post-season derelict gear program, which was any boat can apply for the permit. Then they can go out, keep the gear as long as it's registered, whereas the previous program, they had to return the gear, but they were hired to do the job. So it was between the two programs, it was pretty successful getting gear out of the ocean. So the post season was anywhere, and the mid season was outside 40 fathoms. The total crab caught to date is, for the 2023 season, is 22.2 2 million pounds. Just to give you perspective, last year was 17.2. The previous year from that was 12.2. I'm expecting to see the 10-year average it to be the highest, but we'll see what happens. We still got a lot more season to go. May 1st, all pots that are going to be fishing have to have their summer tag, and the permit, or not the permit, but the application has gone out to all permit holders, but also could be found online or stop by the office anywhere on the marine side of Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, and you can get the application. There's also a 20% gear reduction for all permit holders who are fishing. So if you're a 500 pot permit, you have to reduce 20%, 300, same thing, 200. I believe Washington has similar, but theirs is broken up differently, but it's basically doing the same thing. And then of course, everybody has to fish inside 40 fathoms. Next winter, they're going to be evaluating the summer program, or having the summer 40 fathom line, summer tags, 20% reduction with the commission, ODFW commission, and because it's a temporary rule for 3 years, and also the potential for some increased, or in addition to some other regulations, for example, line markings, which is already required in Washington, but it would be a different color for all crab gear, and surface gear regulation, which means having very little line at the surface to prevent whale entanglements. Does anybody have any questions? Yes, Dale. Okay. Hold on, Dale.
Yeah, I have one comment here on the line marking that you just mentioned. They've been showing to have 2 colors of line marking. Means most of the fixed gear on the coast is crab gear. There shouldn't be any reason for 2 markings. The individual state color should be sufficient to mark the crab gear. It'll save a lot of time and effort on these, getting this done with just the one color.
Okay. There has been a lot of discussion about that issue. Kelly Corbett would be the best person to forward that information to, and I'd be happy to do that from your perspective. And it's been a lot of talk back and forth about what's the best way to do it. So it's not, we're not unaware that the fishermen want it one way, and there may be 2 or 3 other ways to do the same thing. We'll see.
So I can speak to that a little bit, Dale. And so the rationale behind that is 1 color per fishery and 1 color per state. So crab would have 1 color, sablefish would have another color, prawns down in California would have another color, and then below that would attribute it to the state, so that if there is an entanglement issue, they can say, oh, that whale, we'll pick on California. So they're all showing up with California crab gear on them, and then we can say, okay, they need to focus on that and adjust that. So that's kind of the rationale behind the 2 colors. So
crab is the most dominant fish gear on the coast.
Right.
You don't need to have a specific color for crab. It's only 1 color, 3 state colors for crab. If you have a long, for instance, you might only have 2 or 3 for salmon. So that's 6 colors you got to put on there. Somebody fishes here in Columbia, that's 1,000 for them.
Yep, I'm with you on that. I'm just telling you, that's kind of what they were thinking. So that's why.
We've got so many things coming at our plates today. Yeah. That's just one area that we can be a little less restrictive.
Yep, roger that. No, that was just what was discussed at the Pacific Council this week. So just wanted to give you that piece of that. That's why there's 2.
and tracking devices on boats. That's going to be an expense. We've got a asset deal in the state of Washington right now. Fiscal note on that is $2,000 to every boat. I mean, at some point, it becomes prohibitive to keep putting dollar regulations on the fleet, because somebody that's well established, got all their gear paid for and everything, they can handle it fine. You get a new young guy in there, every dollar counts. And when I look down the line at our next generation of fishermen, they have a hell of a time getting into the fishery anyway. And then you keep putting $1,000 here, $2,000 there, another $1,000 here. And pretty soon they don't repair that plank in the boat that needs it. And then they got to call these guys over here because they're sinking. You know, I mean, there's actions that have consequences, you know. So let that go without going. Sorry.
I appreciate your comments. Really, I do. I see both sides. I have empathy for fishermen.
Larry, go ahead.
Yeah, I know we're not here to debate, you know, the specific components of line marking, but I did want to support the general comment that Dale made that, I mean, the crab fishery in Washington, I believe we have somewhere between 85,000 to 100,000 pots. One mark for the crab fishers is 85,000 to 100,000 times 2, because you have to mark the top, you have to mark the bottom. You add another color, well, you can do the math. And that is time, and it is also some money. It's not a huge amount of money for the coloring, but it's a lot of time, and it's tens of thousands of pots. So I would just say, like I say, this is not the subject of this discussion, but just as an aside that, you know, the crab fishery coastwide is likely first to the trough on line marking. And Washington already has a color picked. I don't know that Oregon or California do, I'm not familiar. And we've been using a color. And I think a single color for the crab fishery would distinguish the crab fishery on the West Coast, state by state, and be sufficient. And then the additional fisheries that have so much less gear, so much less line from the bottom to the top to mark, could do multiple markings if necessary to differentiate it from the crab fishery. So for what that's worth, and I know, like I say, that's not the center of our discussions here, but I did want to mention that. Thank you.
I just want you to know too, because you can't see from the computer, that I am taking notes, and I will be passing them on to Kelly, who will be passing them on to Karin, who's the program leader for the Marine program for ODFW.
Okay, Junior, you're up.
Thanks, Jenna. So I want to maybe piggyback off Larry and Dale. I wonder, there was, I thought Dale might have mentioned the electronic monitoring system coming to Washington State. Out of curiosity, I wonder if that system is exclusive to coastal crab fisheries, or can it also be applied within other fisheries, groundfish or pelagic or whatever, and could that assist with whatever monitoring or whatever the concern was about having multiple colors? Thanks.
But the groundfish fleet, federally, they have BMS requirements already on their vessels. I don't know where they're headed with the future. So Jill has more information.
I know that there is in the works commercial crab electronic logbook. It's in the beta level, which means I think it's on 10 different boats, and they're trying to work out any of the problems. And there's also in the works a groundfish electronic logbook, which could, all of that could be used for helping with monitoring and data, accurate data collection and all that sort of stuff. So that's, unfortunately, I know a lot less than my boss about it, but again, she wasn't able to make the meeting. But if you want to talk to Kelly Corbett directly, I can give you her email address.
Yeah, so the electronic monitoring and logbook components that Jill and Jamie have spoken to, they're about co-locating effort where the fishery is fishing on the grounds. The line marking is about attributing take of marine mammals to a source fishery. So they are related, but they do different things. So the line markings would not be obliviated by the vessel monitoring component.
That's all I had for Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife's update.
Okay, thanks, Jill. Any other comments before we move on to California? Okay, go ahead, Christy.
Hi, hope you can see me okay. So we also started our fishery, or was delayed. It was delayed statewide until December 31st. There were two reasons. The central area of our coast was delayed under our risk assessment mitigation program. We had a lot of humpback whales sort of staying in the region well into the late year. And then our northern area was delayed under quality testing. So far, the fishery has brought in about 17.3 million pounds of crab, and that has resulted in an ex-vessel value of $41.9 million. We are seeing through our biweekly reports where we get a snapshot of where traps are and depth ranges. We're seeing through that a lot of participants in the fishery are leaving. That's likely due to the low price that they're getting at the dock. We also have another risk assessment scheduled for the fishery next week, and then we'll start going into a 2-week cycle of assessing risk, looking at whale and turtle migratory observations as we sort of continue on with the season. I believe at this moment, there's no entanglements attributed to the fishery at this time into 2023. That's all I have.
Okay, thanks, Christy. Any comments or questions for Christy in California?
Yeah, Christy, I missed the number of millions of pounds you've got.
Did you hear that?
You missed the pounds?
Yeah, pounds.
Yes, 17.3 million pounds. Just to put that in perspective, that's kind of on the just above average for like the last 10 seasons. We've been sort of on a downturn, so this is definitely a lot higher than what we've been seeing the last 2 seasons.
Okay, thanks. Let's move on to our marine weather update from the Weather Service. Know if that's Trina or Sam. Oh, hi Trina.
Yeah, no, I was struggling with the video. I don't have as much to share as we have been recently because we haven't made as many updates since our last meeting, but I do have a few slides to give visuals that help. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen.
We can see you, but I also see that you're muted.
Interesting. So it will, when I'm sharing my screen, it automatically mutes me.
Oh, weird.
So I will just describe, there's not too much on the screens, and then I can share it with Jenna afterwards. I wanted to give a buoy update. Good news for all the buoys off of shore of Washington. They're all working and reporting. That's a success. As far as, I'm sorry, I thought I saw that somebody couldn't hear me. In Oregon, we have the NOAA buoy, the 46015, that's just north of the California border. That one was struck by a vessel in November and is scheduled to be serviced. It says May 23rd. That's always weather dependent. And then buoy 22, 46022, which is just offshore of Humboldt Bay Bar, is failed in February and is also scheduled to be serviced in May. I'm going to put a link in the chat room that is an article that was published in our Weather Ready Nation Marine Ambassador newsletter. So that's a new program that we've been talking about, and Sam's going to talk about it a little bit more. But in this marine article, they did provide a little bit more information about the SCOOP, which is the self-contained ocean observing payload on the buoys, which is what allowed us to have that more frequency wave data buoy reporting of 30 minutes. I know we all would like to have more frequent than that, but if you're interested in what that SCOOP payload is, there's a little description of that in that article. And there's some other information on how the National Weather Service forecasters use marine observations from vessel marine reports, and some climatology on hurricane force winds for the North Atlantic and also the North Pacific, which, hurricane force winds is not that common in our coastal waters in the Pacific. But just to let you know, there's some information on that. And then the other thing I wanted to report is we are having a change in the ENSO, the El Nino La Nina cycle, or the El Nino Southern Oscillation cycle. So the Climate Prediction Center has issued its final La Nina advisory on March 9th. And this is pretty big because we've been in La Nina pattern for the last 3 years, but it's shifting. And I looked today, today the sea surface temperatures are looking like we're possibly done with La Nina. We need to see that last for a certain amount of time to call it done completely. And we will be in ENSO neutral conditions this spring and into early summer. So what does that mean? Well, that means the weather across the Pacific is not going to be influenced by El Nino or La Nina. And there's like a greater chance that it will be closer to our normal or our long-term average. It looks like we expect to be in El Nino conditions going into the fall and winter, and we could talk more about that at in the next 6 months to prep us for that season. But now Sam was going to talk a little bit more about the Weather Ready Nation Marine program. Otherwise, that's all the updates I have. So go ahead, Sam.
Awesome. Thank you, Trina. Good afternoon, all. So I just wanted to kind of provide a brief plug-in for the National Weather Service, pretty much their Weather Ready Nation Marine Ambassador program. So what exactly is this program? Well, essentially, it's an initiative designed to help serve the public by strengthening our national resilience against extreme weather events and marine weather hazards. So any marine organization can become a Weather Ready Nation ambassador. So prevention and resilience is pretty much a shared value, and marine ambassadors play a key role in maintaining that value. So all in all, what exactly does this entail? Well, ambassador duties typically include promoting weather and safety info with your stakeholders, engaging and collaborating with us at our NWS offices, sharing your preparedness success stories, and essentially serving as an example for others in the marine community in regards to preparedness. Benefits from the program, just want to briefly touch on those. It'd be an increased collaboration and shared best practices amongst the marine community. This program can also pretty much help provide a better means of communicating improvements in marine related products and services. And it can be a great resource that is available to strengthen preparedness measures. And it allows you to utilize the Weather Ready Nation preparedness info for any outreach purposes you guys might have. So all in all, the Weather Ready Nation program is a great way for us to collaborate and engage with our partners. And this marine subsection of the program really aims to do all of that, but with more of a marine focus. So if you're interested in signing up, you can always contact me at samantha.borth@noaa.gov, and I'll put my information in the chat. And then Trina can get you in the right contacts for the NWS office down in Portland. But we each maintain our own Weather Ready Nation Marine ambassadors. And so if you're interested, let us know. But that's pretty much all that I've got, and I'll pass it back over to Trina in case she's got anything else.
Yeah, no, I actually don't have any other updates. We've been busy, just to be honest. We've had quite a winter weather. But our marine program is, we made a lot of the updates. We're still in the experimental coastal flood warning period. I think that experiment ends in summer, so I don't have anything to update on that. So is there any questions for me or Sam?
Any questions? Oh.
She's putting a link in the chat. I don't have the computer up now. You put that link.
Yep. So there's an audience question. They want the link. So I will put that link in my meeting minutes and share it with folks.
Perfect.
And I see Junior.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I found myself curious about the weather buoy that's down Southern Oregon that got struck by a vessel. That circumstance kind of goes along somewhat of my concerns earlier about the Quileute lander buoys and the moorage of those. And what happens if, you know, whether it's due to negligence or pure accident or whatever, what happens to the fishermen, the boat owner, the captain, the crew, if they damage a weather buoy such as the one off Oregon, or the ones off of the prospective buoys from the two tribes? I don't know if anybody can answer that here, but from a fisherman's standpoint, it just sort of raises a few concerns in my mind. Thanks.
Yeah, that's a good question. Anybody in the Coast Guard have an answer? I don't actually know that if there's what responsibility or accountability is placed, if any.
Yeah, this is Chris. You can talk to each. But anyway, that particular incident is the subject of an ongoing investigation with the NOAA General Counsel for Enforcement and NOAA Office of Law Enforcement. So in cases like that, they do look out and we'll work with NOAA to identify if there was negligence involved. If it was purely an accident, probably nothing. If there was negligence, then that goes through the NOAA civil system, and they would look at it and assess penalties as appropriate. That's probably all I should say.
Yeah, this is Brendan Harris, our way shop. How we deal with it from an aids to navigation perspective is we'll do an investigation as well. In the event we have a struck aid to navigation, and if we can identify who caused it, then we will determine if we can hold them accountable to pay for whether it's rebuilding a fixed aid to navigation or the damage caused to a floating aid to navigation. But we don't have $1 million of sensor equipment on ours. So that's not quite at the same level.
Okay, thanks everybody.
Any other questions? Okay. Oh, yep.
I just wanted to thank Trina and Noah for everything they do, and to point out this is the first winter in a long time we haven't had a weather fail. So whatever NDBC is doing testing, the buoys out there, they're working.
Thank you, Dan, for acknowledging that. It's also been a huge win for us and our forecasters because, you know, we don't have a lot of data upstream or over the ocean. And so when we're trying to make forecasts based off of one buoy, as I'm sure most of you can imagine, or sometimes no buoys, it's really hard. So it's nice to know that you are also appreciating that great season of having data.
Okay, well, thank you, Trina and Sam. Up next, we've got our Pacific Port Access Route Study update. Here you go. There you go.
Yeah, thank you, Jenna. Did I have a chance to send the brief to you at all?
No.
Okay, so I'll just go through it real quickly, and then I'll forward the presentation to Jenna, and she can share with the community after we're done here. But no, really appreciate your time this afternoon. So the Port Access Route Study, where we are currently at after our last update provided to you, I believe the last meeting around August. We held the public comment period. The public comment period for the draft proposed routing measures and study closed on November 8th. We've received 40,000 plus signatures and comments. A lot of the signatures were attached to a comment, and we received really 95 full submissions for comments to the draft proposal. 3 of those really applied to the Pacific Northwest. A lot of the comments more pertained to the California coast, and whale strikes was a significant part of that. So our sister office down in District 11 for California is working on the response to those comments. For the District 13 perspective, one of the comments came from the Makah tribe requesting formal government consultation as the recommended offshore fairway extends into their usual and custom fishing grounds a pretty significant distance. So they just want to understand the impact of that to their tribal rights. So we have ongoing consultation occurring with the Makah right now. A second comment was received from the Columbia River pilots. Both of our pilots and the river pilots really appreciate the conversation with Captain Jordan and understanding on how best we could propose approach fairway to the Columbia River Basin that would meet the needs of mariners. So we adjusted the approach to a more funnel. So it starts at the far westward reaches, at the offshore fairway. It's 30 miles wide, and then it narrows down to 10 miles wide by the time it gets to meeting up with the inshore coastal fairway. We also slightly moved the northerly approach fairway into the Columbia River east. So it still meets the offshore fairway north of or west of the area to be avoided, but it is now pointed at the Columbia River approach buoy instead of at the mouth of where that offshore approach fairway had ended in the past. We just wanted a more direct approach to the fairway. In addition to that, we've removed the approach fairway that had been going south from the Columbia River. After further analysis, we determined there wasn't enough historical vessel traffic on that corridor to support federal regulation of it. So the funnel shape created covers a little bit of that area, but we've removed that 5 mile wide fairway that headed south down towards offshore Coos Bay. For the approach fairways to Coos Bay, we previously had two, one that headed kind of southwest out of the harbor and the other headed northwest. We consolidated those into one funnel approach, very similar to the approach off of Columbia River that's now being recommended. I think it widens out to about 20 miles offshore Coos Bay when it intersects the offshore fairway, and is about 10 miles wide when it intersects the coastal fairway. There has been zero changes with regards to the coastal fairway. So we are maintaining the recommendation, and we intend to push that to both the Pacific Area Commander for consideration and then up to Coast Guard headquarters for further consideration as well. The offshore fairway, the same story. We're still recommending that be 15 miles wide to support what has been historical vessel traffic that we were able to analyze and provide the research to justify that establishment. So really the major changes from the original are to those approach fairways. So we are still completely overlaying the established crabber towboat tow lanes. And the idea being that it covers the tow lanes while leaving this community the opportunity to be flexible with where exactly those agreed lanes fall during the course of your mitigation efforts between those two industries. So that's still the preferred approach there. We did receive a comment from BOEM as well. As you might imagine, they have requested that we move some of the fairways to better align with their plans for where they can potentially institute their lease areas, wind energy areas, and then potentially wind farms into the future. At this point, they're saying that they would like to establish those all within the 1,300 meter curve offshore. So the presentation that I'm going to send to Jenna, many of the slides clearly display where that 1,300 meter curve is. The impact to the offshore fairway off of Bandon is, from our current proposal, is 0. So that most southerly fairway off of the south coast of Oregon is not impacted by current fairways. The more northern lease area that they are putting out for consideration off of Coos Bay, the pretty much the bottom 2/3 of that approach area, and then also the eastern edge of it are impacted both by our approach fairways and by the coastal fairway. And there's a DOD feedback on that as well, where DOD has asked to reserve a section of that call area for their activities. So that northern Coos Bay call area will be impacted by the proposal that the Coast Guard currently has. We did adjust slightly to support a little bit more freedom on that north of the Coos Bay approach fairway. But for the most part, we're still intending to establish vessel traffic fairways that match what is seen and what has been proposed previously. Thanks, John. So John Moreira did a good job of printing it out for us and getting some copies. So those around the table here got some visibility on what the current proposals look like. So hopefully you guys might be able to speak to them and provide us some feedback if you have it. But we're moving forward. It's going to be pushed up to Coast Guard headquarters. They'll then conduct an analysis of the full report and determine where they want to move forward on the federal regulatory process. In the event they adopt our study and adopt our recommendations without changes, it will be put forward as a proposal for public rulemaking, and it will go through another public comment period. It will also require an environmental study to be completed. I don't know what that will be at this point, whether that's an environmental assessment or a full environmental impact study. That will be determined by Coast Guard headquarters. We're anticipating that the timeline to get this complete, once we have forwarded it, is most likely 2 to 5 years. In the meantime, we're being as transparent as we can with BOEM and any other impacted waterways users or anybody else looking to utilize the waterway for any other novel usage outside of just wind energy. So they are aware of it, and BOEM has actively been trying to plan around where those proposed areas are, so that it won't take until the final regulatory process is complete before they're able to take action on it. So that's kind of where we stand right now, and definitely open to any questions you might have, and appreciate the opportunity to provide an update today.
Any comments? Yep, Larry.
Thank you, Commander. So out the gate, the Washington Crab Fishermen's Association, Washington Dungeness Crab Fishermen's Association truly appreciates the work that Coast Guard put into the Fairways proposal, and especially are appreciative of the coastal fairway zone and the concept of wrapping it around existing tow lanes, which would allow for movement of those lanes within the coastal fairway zone if required or recommended. I do see a change to the northwest corner of the coastal fairway zone of approximately 5 statute miles to the east. We supported the coastal fairway zone as it was proposed originally. We're a little concerned about that adjustment. It does narrow the area that would be free of fixed structures, temporary or permanent, within the area that was originally described. So the area for fixed structures potentially is larger than by that area moved to the east. So I am concerned about that, but I still appreciate that it fundamentally it resolves the problems or the purposes that the discussion centered around to begin with. One of the things, though, that an additional concern I have about that eastward movement is that as a member of the Grays Harbor Safety Committee, there's a recognition that Grays Harbor has very limited anchorage and very limited berthing. So when vessels approach Grays Harbor to enter into berth, it's a standard of care or expected behavior or a request of behavior that ships stand outside of 25 miles while they await a berthing or piloting opportunity. And I am concerned that, I mean, in order for those ships to loiter at that distance offshore, they need to have an area free of obstructions to do that. And I am a little concerned that by moving the diagonal northwest-southeast lane and then the western edge of the coastal fairway zone to the east, that I'm not sure, I hope that still provides for that area of loitering in a potentially fixture-free area. So that's one comment. Maybe you could respond somewhat to that. The other piece that I've recently become aware of that might become problematic is that the Coast Guard, in your proposal, stop the northern end of the coastal zone fairway where it abuts the marine sanctuary. And if I recall, the reasons for that included the presumption that there would not be likely any fixed structures that would be allowed within the marine sanctuary. I was at a Washington Coastal Marine Advisory Council meeting just 2 days ago. And unfortunately, the administrator for the marine sanctuary, or the representative that was speaking, spoke to the idea of changing some of the allowed activities in the marine sanctuary to include potentially renewable energy developments. And so the assumption by the Coast Guard and others that there would likely not be, or it would be a prohibited behavior in the marine sanctuary to have industrialized developments on the ocean, may not be the case. And so I wanted to point that out. There's a comment period on proposed re-examination of purpose and activities that could be allowed in the marine sanctuary. It's an open comment period right now. But that has, in my mind, kind of changed a presumption that there was no need to add those additional protections for navigation and safety into the marine sanctuary. That may be a changing occurrence. And then the last thing that I was curious about is the comment period. That you did say that there will be another comment period based on the adjustments that were made. I just wondered if you could speak to that just a little more. So those are some of my observations, comments, and questions, and thank you.
No, thanks, Larry. Definitely appreciate all the feedback. And for a little clarification, I guess, from my perspective, we didn't move that coastal fairway at all. So that coastal fairway is the same one that existed in the draft proposal from August with the comment period through November. So when you talk about moving the western edge 5 miles to the east, can you help me understand that a little bit better?
Larry, you're muted.
Yeah, having a hard time getting to the right button. So we plotted the coordinates that we were provided in the original coastal fairway zone description on a raster map. And then now we have replotted the coordinates that are provided after the adjustments, to the Columbia River approaches, Coos Bay approaches, the diagonal change, northwest southeast angle. Yep. And we came up with a smaller northwest corner. And if the intent is to be exactly the same as what the coastal fairway zone was originally, I mean, I applaud that. Absolutely. I applauded the original position. And if it hasn't actually changed, then that would be welcome. But we do have a conflicting, comparing the coordinate numbers for the northwest corner of that coastal fairway zone north of Grays Harbor that abuts the marine sanctuary, the coordinates that were in the original publication are different for that corner than what's in it now.
Gotcha. So, so the coastal fairway, and how we're looking at it, is that diagonally stenciled area that is directly offshore, starts 3 miles from the baseline and ends varying distances from 12 to 25 miles offshore. The area that you're talking about is what we're considering the approach fairway to the Columbia River. So we did move that to better align with directing those vessels to the mouth of the Columbia River versus directing them to the mouth of the approach fairway that is 10 to 15 miles offshore. So in doing that, that caused that 5 mile wide fairway to then be directly abutted to the western edge of the area to be avoided. So that was never intended as the coastal fairway and to overlay the tug tow lanes. That was more intended for deep water vessel traffic that might be coming down from the Puget Sound AOR, so they could have a more direct route to the mouth of the Columbia River. Does that make sense?
Well, that does. I understand the difference between the diagonal northwest-southeast approach to the Columbia River that abutted the western edge of the coastal fairway zone. What I am saying is that the coordinates that were listed in the original pack pars for the northwest corner of the coastal fairway zone are different than what has now been listed in the adjusted report proposal by about 4 to 5 nautical miles. And maybe we can have a discussion on the phone. I don't have those specific points and coordinates right in front of me, but there is definitely a difference in those coordinates.
Okay, good copy, Larry. I'll have to go back and validate that, and we'll definitely reach out to you offline to make sure we're on the same page there. Our intent was to not adjust the coastal fairway at all. So if that occurred in what we sent you, we'll look to address that and make sure we got the right data points that we're sending along.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And then I just wondered what your take was on what is now the potential proposal for modifications to marine sanctuary purposes and activities that might include the allowance of fixed structures, depending on the response to the RFI that's been issued on marine sanctuary activities, how that might color your approach to the north end, which ends 8 miles or so above Grace Harbor for that coastal fairway zone.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. I know you've brought that up in the past too. I'm not too much familiar with what the National Marine Sanctuary is proposing for that area, so I'm gonna have to get a little bit smarter on that. Sorry I don't have a answer for you, but right now our assumptions going into this process throughout have been that national marine sanctuaries would be off limits to any infrastructure. So if that's not the case, obviously we're going to have to adjust course in determining where we're going to implement these fairways. So I'll tell you that we have the study available now. We have the data to support establishing fairways through those regions if need be. And we will stay engaged and ensure that we are aware of what the latest proposals are from national marine sanctuaries and their intentions. And if we need to recommend and establish additional fairways that go through the area to be avoided, we will do that.
Okay, and thank you very much for that. And I don't know if you really need this information right now, but if you're willing to take it, there's actually a comment period open right now on the marine sanctuary potential future activities and potential changes to the allowable activities in the sanctuary, Olympic sanctuary specifically. And it's regulations.gov, NOAA-NOS, NOS-2023-0003. And I can also provide that offline. So thank you very much for all that you've been doing on our behalf, or on behalf of navigation and safety off our shores.
I appreciate it, Larry. And just want to address some of the other things that you brought up. You talked about loitering vessels too, and vessels waiting to transit inbound. So the fairways don't prohibit loitering. They don't prohibit anchoring. So that activity can still take place within those areas where we are developing fairways. We're not developing specific loitering areas at this time. But if there's the need based on how operators see the restrictions and how it impacts the safety of navigation out there, we'll continue to be engaged in those discussions and determine if additional routing measures need to be implemented to support safe operations out there.
If I may then, and I appreciate the original proposal as we interpreted it, and without considering what I see as different coordinates, did in fact encompass an area. And I understand everything you said relative to the free area, and that loitering can occur. It's just loitering is hard to occur if there's an obstruction or a fixed structure within that area. And so my question was more about if indeed the changes that I saw to the coastal fairway zone were in place, would that still allow for an unobstructed area beyond 25 miles for ships to loiter while they awaited berthing and care off of Grays Harbor? So that is kind of tied to the answer to the question, was there indeed any alterations to that western edge? If there were not, then I know it's sufficient as previously described to accommodate that activity, which is an important piece of safe navigation off of the Grays Harbor area. Thank you.
Okay, sounds good. We'll work on validating what we sent you and ensure it aligns with what we're intending to forward along and look to get on the same page with you on that. For the comment period, we in PAC area District 11, District 13 do not intend on putting our final recommendations out for an additional comment period. I guess we don't really feel that the changes were sufficient to put it out right now, and the additional comments periods will be led by Coast Guard headquarters. If you would like to address further comments up our chain of command. That being said, there's going to be at a minimum one more comment period before any regulation is finalized, and most likely 2 comment periods. So while we are finalized with receiving comments at this point, happy to continue the conversations, ensure we're on the same page with what we are proposing, but you will definitely have the opportunity to address any additional concerns as the process moves along.
Thank you very much.
Hey, Larry, can you type in that public comment link into the chat for the marine sanctuaries?
Yes, I'll do that. As a digitally challenged old guy, I forget what some of our digital options are. So yes, I will do that.
Actually, Larry, I can type it out right now. Do you want to just tell me?
Yeah, it's regulations.gov. NOAA dash.
Is it a slash?
It's NOAA, NOAA dash NOS dash 2023 dash 0003. I will still put it in the chat.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, and thank you for the time here.
Any other comments or questions for Commander Harris?
I got a couple here.
Hold on.
I got a couple here. I heard the same discussion that Larry heard on the sanctuary, and so I won't go into that. But also, if you read BOEM policy, BOEM has a policy of not putting structures in a sanctuary. So those two things are clashing a bit. But if BOEM has a policy of not putting anything in a sanctuary, that shouldn't happen. So that doesn't matter what the marine sanctuary says, and BOEM doesn't authorize it. Not going to happen. That's the way I view that.
Okay.
And the other question I have is that if I read the federal law correct, once the Coast Guard has proposed what you put on paper, even though they haven't finalized it, something else can't come in and trump it while it's in the process of being finalized. That's how I read the law. Is that correct?
I'll have to go back and review. That's how I interpret it as well, but let me check.
Yeah, I appreciate the lawyer thing, but as long as you at least read it the same way as I do, then I think we're probably on the same page, and that probably won't change, but I was reasonably certain that's what it says. So, yeah. Because that's a concern. These things move glacially slowly, and sometimes when you're looking 2 to 5 years to do one and somebody else comes in 4.5 years, you're messed up. So that's why I made that comment.
No, thank you, Dale. I think we're on the same page there. And I would say that BOEM has been very open to our discussions as we have gone through this process. So they are very much aware of that. Obviously, there is other activity out there on the waterway that isn't directly tied to BOEM. So we're looking to engage there, and that mostly impacts Southern California with space activity and some aqua farms. Our aqua farms up here in the Pacific Northwest aren't offshore at this point, but they are dealing with some of those discussions as well.
Yeah, I understand. You're right to talk aquaculture off Southern Cal. I don't know how that's up in our area. That's another, if we don't have to address that. And yeah, we really appreciate it going on. Support.
I really appreciate the input from all, and we'll continue the conversation. Even though we're hoping to forward this along to PAC area and headquarters in the near future, we'll obviously continue to be involved in the discussions, and if things change, we'll shift rudder as necessary.
I did notice that Pacific Fisheries I kind of skimmed what's been going on, and it sounds like they're going to ask for BOEM to start over in Oregon, if I heard correctly. And I don't know where that's going. And I haven't been directly involved in that process. Larry has.
Yeah, I heard that as well, and Chris was more directly involved in that conversation earlier this week than I was, and we also saw there was an article about tribes having some concerns about how quickly this process is moving as well, and asking the administration to put a moratorium on wind energy development. So I think there's a lot going on out there. There's a lot of concerns about overall impact to activities on the waterway. So it's definitely a dynamic discussion at this point.
Okay, thanks. Larry, last word on this topic. Go for it.
Apparently I take up most of the time, Jenna, so sorry for extending the meeting. Colin's fault.
Oh, so I guess I did the button thing wrong again. So I apologize for that. So this is a little bit of feel, but it follows up on what Dale just said. There is an absolute certainty that the Pacific Fisheries Management Council did, in fact, yesterday, pass a motion to request that BOEM rescind and revisit the call areas off of Washington, or I mean off of Oregon, for a whole host of reasons. It was a 10-0 vote with the 3 state agencies abstaining. I'm not sure how the BOEM is going to react to that, but it was a very, very thoughtful and lengthy discussion on the pros and cons of making that request. And I will, I don't know if I can do it, but there's a link. The Pacific Fisheries Management Council records all their meetings, and you can get a link to yesterday's meeting where that decision was made. The results of that going forward, nobody's clear on what BOEM's reaction will be to that, but it was a response to what was considered a fast-paced process, a data-limited process, and a response to some of the new suitability modeling that is available now that wasn't available when the original call areas were identified off of Oregon. So for what that's worth, and sorry to take extra time, but I wanted to clarify, it's not a question. They did it yesterday, and I was a part of the comment process, and thank you.
All right, thanks for that update, Larry. Yeah, one way or the other, we're moving forward with the development of routing measures and fairways off the coast. So can't speak to how BOEM's going to react to that, but we'll continue our process as stated previously, and look forward to seeing how everything develops.
Okay, we're up to our very last agenda item. Alden Lundy with BOEM. Are you ready?
That's me. Can I share screen, please?
Sure.
Perfect. Can you see that okay?
We can see it. You're not in presenter view. Yep, there we go. Yep.
Perfect. Let me know if anything happens regarding the service or the connectivity. It's raining pretty heavily here in Santa Barbara, and it's been doing something funky. It's great to be here. My name is Alden Lundy. I've been with the BOEM Pacific region for about 2 years. The previous presenters at this, Ken Clark and Lisa Gentry, are unfortunately, one is out on a medical leave and the other has left us for an onshore wind company. So wishing them better things, but if you could include me on the contact going forward for these meetings, that would be fantastic. I'm going to give a brief overview over what has happened for the West Coast in terms of our renewable energy activities. And at the end, I'll be happy to take some questions. And then if there's anything I can't answer, I will take back to the department and get some official ones for you. So I know there's going to be some varying amounts of familiarity, but I'll just start with the fact that BOEM's mission and our federal regulations are to manage the development of the U.S. Outer Continental Shelf, energy mineral resources in an environmentally and economically responsible way. We have jurisdiction over the U.S. West Coast in the Pacific region from 3 to 200 nautical miles, which excludes national marine sanctuaries. This is the current state of the West Coast call areas and wind energy areas that we have. For California, we had a final sale notice published in October, and we held an auction for the 5 lease areas in December 2002. The lease execution will occur after the lease sale 259 in the Gulf of Mexico, which is an oil and gas lease sale due to the Inflation Reduction Act. In the act, it tied renewable energy leases to conventional energy leases. So without one of a suitable size, we are not able to hold it until then. So although the auction has been completed, the leases are not signed and executed until that other lease area has been done. We are meeting provisionally with the winners, and there may be some upcoming name changes as the companies reshuffle and they find new investments. For Oregon, we've been collaborating with NOAA's National Center for Coastal Ocean Science, NCOS for short, to use spatial modeling to further our area ID. Our joint report should be expected in the coming months, which goes over the Oregon coast and the call areas that we've announced. As we go forward, the wind energy area identification process continues as we take and try to find all best available data. You may have seen this rainbow slide if you've been in a meeting with BOEM before, but it's a brief overview of how our process works according to the regulations given to us by Congress. I put these 2 on here so you can see where we are in the process of each. Oregon is currently at the call, and then over the next half year or longer, going through the wind area energy identification process. California is after the auction, but prior to lease granting due to that little technical regulation that I explained a little bit earlier. Some brief background is that these are the 5 lease areas off the coast of Morro Bay and Humboldt, and these are the amounts that each of them went for. A few of the names on here you may see as the original bidding company, but in upcoming announcements or something in the news, you may have seen a different name as they have changed since incorporating. But BOEM is still working to have the original leases executed with the names of the companies that won the auction. And then Lisa gave me a little bit of a debrief on what happened at the last meeting, and there were some questions about how BOEM's process moves going forward post-auction in California. So I really wanted to highlight the 3 required communication plans, which are the Native American Tribes Communication Plan, the Agency Communications Plan, and the Fisheries Communication Plan, all of which will be overseen by BOEM to make sure that they meet our regulations and the mandatory requirements for engagement, coordinated engagement, and month, 6 month, half a year progress reports. Post lease, they are not granted the ability to put anything in the water. What they are allowed to do is to do surveys, which they then come to ask us for site assessment plans, which will further down the line be a COP that they submit. And after final environmental assessments, they will be able to, if deemed suitable, go forward with the plans, but on a long timeline, still going forwards. If you want to take a look at what the regulations are for the best practices for avian, geotechnical, geohazard, archaeological and historical property, as well as mitigating impacts to commercial and recreational fishing, this slide is going to be available. I'm going to send this presentation over to Sea Grant afterwards so you can take a look and see what we have laid out as the mandates for people to be able to meet our guidelines. To describe the COP, these are the 6 steps that are going to go through. Project information, including all planning activities. There was a little bit of a miscommunication, I believe, that they get to determine the things that they want to do or the way that things are constructed. They are simply going to submit a plan of which we have total final approval. So BOEM, in fact, according to our regulations, does get to decide those things and at no point is being told what to do. After that, we go through survey results, certifications, oil spill response plan, safety management systems, and other information, including the conduct process for NEPA and other relevant laws. To move on to Oregon, these are the announced Oregon call areas of which we've been continuing to collect data and undergo suitability assessments. They outline about 4,691 square kilometers off the coast, but these call areas are far larger than the California call areas in an attempt to be more accessible, take in more information, and have more available space to find the most suitable wind energy areas instead of the approach in California with smaller call areas where there was less ability for us to be reactive. So I'm going to go into some of the new information that we recently put up, which is the AIS VMS data. And on that point, I want to echo the thoughts of what the Coast Guard commander said at the beginning of the meeting, that for all of us, it is incredibly helpful to have all of that data and to have all the ships using it as much as possible. So we take the points, convert them into lines, overlay them on a grid, and then count the hits or the distance from each of those things to be able to put these maps together. I'm going to show you the slide that we presented at your last meeting, which was these data sets. And as you can see, they stopped at 2018 for the second one. We have the overlay of the crab tow lanes, the old VMS graph that we showed you last time, ODFW and territorial sea plan. We don't have the ODFW data yet. That is currently being used for NCOS, as well as that's probably going to be coming in the next couple months. But as such, we will continue to publicize all available data that we can get. So this is the new VMS data for Dungeness crab. We
Hey,
have
Alden,
yes.
our TV just turned off, so hold on one sec.
I will hold on.
Uh-oh. There's no phones. That's okay. Baby. Hold on. Okay, we see you.
Okay, can you see me okay?
Yep.
You should be seeing the VMS Dungeness crab. Is that the slide that's up?
Uh-huh.
Perfect. Okay, so here you have the full coast, but The next is overlaid with the current call areas, more zoomed in, and any overlapping VMS plot points that we have. The one on the left is just the new information that we didn't have prior to the last meeting. The one on the right is all of it added together as a unit. Here we have whiting up and down the coast, and then broken down through each of the call areas that we currently have announced. Bottom trawl. And again, I'm going to be sending this presentation on, so if you want to take a closer look at it, it's also available on BOEM's website. Pink shrimp. And I believe that is the last, no, okay. Highly migratory species, up and down the coast, and then within each of our call areas. So on this, here's the contact for the general renewable energy mailbox, as well as my contact information, if you want to reach out with any questions regarding it. Let me stop sharing and have a few more small updates. So in terms of all fisheries, we're going to have a lot to share soon, but not yet. Be looking out for our announcement regarding the NCOS process. We have worked with Pacific States to add the 2018 to 21 VMS data, which I showed you there, but there's far more information than those slides that I pulled out. And we have recently re-upped our study for ancient landforms off of Washington. And this study is through our Office of Environment to better understand potential impacts that development can have on submerged paleo landforms, and a holistic assessment including tribal ecological knowledge and traditional tribal knowledge. In terms of tribal updates, up and down the coast, we've continued to engage during each of BOEM's announcements. We've been meeting with the tribes near the Coos Bay area and up and down the West Coast tribal landscape to show interested tribes any information as well as be as receptive as possible. If you are more interested, some of our recent meetings are up on BOEM's webpage, and we are looking forward to the finalization of PACPARs and have appreciated our coordination with the Coast Guard, ensuring safety for all of our vessels and communal usage of the oceans. So that's all I have for the update. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to field some.
All right, Bob, go for it.
Yes, yeah, forgive me, but I've been kind of in and out during this meeting. One of our primary fisheries is trapping sablefish, the most valuable single groundfish species. Did I miss a map with the sablefish activity?
That data will be online. I grabbed the most important ones. I had a brief 10 minutes to do the update, but we do have that information.
I see, or I don't see. Thank you.
So Alden, you will send me a map with sablefish, is that correct?
Yes, I can get that for you.
Okay, thanks. Any other comments for Alden?
I have a couple of questions for Alden.
Okay, so we're gonna do Dale. Bob, I see your hand is still raised. Do you have, okay. So we're gonna do Dale and then Larry. We are 3 minutes over. Alden, are you okay to stick around for a little bit?
Yeah, I'm good to stick around for a few questions.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, Alden, I don't know if my ears deceived me or what, but I thought I heard you say BOEM won't be told what to do. I didn't know what context that was in exactly, that comment.
Oh, well, to clarify, there was a comment that the industry was going to tell BOEM what they were going to do, but BOEM holds final say over constructions and operations plans.
what that means is that the offshore developer won't be telling BOEM what to do. Is that what that comment referred to?
Yes.
Okay. And you did mention oil spills. And I'm wondering how much analysis has gone into the number of gallons in at-sea substations. I've read someplace where there might be like 200,000 gallons of oil in a substation for 1,000 mg offshore wind facility. I'm wondering if that 200,000 is a minimal level, because like in Washington, the proposals we have are to a couple thousand mg units. And I don't know how much oil is going to be involved in a floating substation and how that risk is being factored into the entire situation.
Yeah, so if you want me to re-share that slide, what you saw was actually specifically our oil spill plans that will come up. Let me pull it up for you. So that is directly related because, you know, we want to make sure that we maintain our ocean environment. And then you'll see that. So as required by CFR 30, Part 254, the oil spill response plan is mandated, but there will also be BSEE, our sister agency, looking over the construction and operations plans once we hand over the leases. I have to say, I have not heard that number in terms of what is going into undersea substations, but going forwards, once we get constructions and operations plans, that is when we will have final numbers on what they plan or may need for undersea substations.
Okay, you keep mentioning undersea. My reference was to floating offshore wind stations.
Floating as well.
Because I think one of the reasons for the oil in the transformers is for cooling purposes. If they're subsea stations like sitting on the ocean floor, the cooling is a lot different than it being in the open air. So there's quite a bit of difference if that is on the bottom or floating, and the amount of oil risk that's exposed to the environment. So let's not get confused on those. And as we move forward, if these things do float on the surface, where the plan itself is irrelevant, because what little bit of recovery has happened, like we had a Nestucca oil spill, for instance, at Grace Harbor here a number of years ago, 0 gallons were recovered at sea, 0. So that's just an example of what, and if I remember correctly, that spill was in the neighborhood of 200,000 gallons as well. And I think there were like 58,000 seabirds killed in it, in that 200,000 gallon spill that happened with 0 oil recovery. So I do have some concerns about that and how that's going to be addressed.
Absolutely, I agree with you there. We're on that side of making sure that there's all safety plans in place and trying to make sure that none of that ever happens. But again, I have not heard that number that you have laid out in terms of oil. And again, for floating subsea stations, we don't have plans from developers, and we will not for a long time. So cannot comment on that until the constructions and operation plans are in front of us, and then we can put in place all necessary safety for it.
I might have another question after some others have a chance here.
And I do want to remind our audience that we're asking BOEM questions that are semi-related to the tow lanes. I realize that having access to BOEM right now is really special, but we don't want to abuse this privilege. So let's keep them related to the tow lanes. All right, Larry, go ahead, and then we'll go to Junior and then back to Dale.
Yeah, you know, we have had numerous discussions over a considerable time frame over, the BOEM process and the data gaps and all of that. And this is not the place to discuss those. I appreciate Alden's presentation. I would like to say, though, that at the PFMC meeting yesterday, an updated collaborative effort by the Department of Fish and Wildlife and NOAA and BOEM offered up some variations and new data for the NCOS suitability model. And I encourage people that are interested and would like to get updated or get caught up with some of the latest information to listen to the PFMC recording from yesterday. And what I will do is I have a link that I will pass to Jenna, and hopefully then she could distribute it to those that are on the Tolane list of interested parties. Just one other thing, there ended being a more thorough look at fisheries data and how to rank the importance of fisheries areas. And this was confined to the call areas that are presently identified in Oregon. But the discussion really had much broader implications, and especially relative to the tribal comments, which were very forceful and very determinative, I believe, relative to how more data needs to be included in these models and more recognition of the government to government process that has not really started with BOEM, and concerns over unintended ecosystem consequences, which is shared by all of us that rely on marine resources and the California current system off of our Pacific coast. So I'll send that link to you, Jenna. Hope you will get it out to the others. And like you say, this is not directly connected to the Tolane discussion. However, the PAC-PARs and the Tolanes were a real large part of what are considered constraints within the NCOS model that would prohibit pretty large areas of the present call off of Coos Bay, as Commander Harris mentioned earlier, to be considered as usable for development. So there is a connection, certainly, as everything is connected, all of these activities on the Pacific coast. And thank you.
Larry, I'm sorry, I don't know if I caught your question there.
Yeah, I didn't really have a question, Alden. But I do, in your presentation, you did refer fundamentally to VMS data. There's been also long-term discussions on how representative, using VMS data as the sole source of describing fishing activities doesn't apply for all fisheries, since not all fisheries are required to have VMS. So I really did not have a question. It was more of a comment and a reference to the really good work and the movement of the NCOS suitability model towards a more applicable potential tool to identify lower conflict areas off our coast for offshore wind development than what's been utilized thus far. That's fundamentally what I was saying.
Absolutely. We're very excited about our partnership with NOAA on the NCOOS project going forwards. But as I echoed earlier, we encourage everybody to continue to use AIS as much as possible. More data is better than less. I think I see a last hand from Junior.
Yeah, thanks Alden, and thanks everybody. So
I guess to maintain focus on the towboat lane subject, I found myself wondering about the federal laws that protect submarine cables from injury or damage or destruction. And so I wonder what other forums are available for the fishermen to address concerns surrounding eliminating our fishermen right of access to our fishing grounds in the context of those federal laws that I mentioned that protect submarine cables from damage or injury. And so apart from this towboat discussion, how can we engage on that other greater issue of eliminating access to our fishing areas, which could be a considerable amount of surface area of where we traditionally fish for crab, any trawlers, any groundfish fishery, bottom fish, whatever it is. And so are there additional opportunities to engage on that greater subject? Thanks.
Sure. Let me know if I'm responding correctly to your question. I'm not sure what lack of access or right of access that you're referring to that would be lost, but if it is in the case of, say, a potential leased area, I believe in my presentation, I laid out the Fisherman Communications Plan, and I also would love to highlight something that BOEM Pacific has done for the first time ever in terms of our department, which is our CBAs, our community benefits agreements, which include ways for people to communicate and work with the lessees in order to find funds as well as benefit agreements that you can communicate with them on, as well as their communication plans. But in terms of everything else, BOEM follows every regulation we can and are interested and focused on accomplishing our mission of fair and equitable development of energy on the West Coast.
Okay, thank you, Alden. If I may follow up. So my concerns are more exclusive towards, so I'm a tribal fisherman. I'm an enrolled member of the Quinault Indian Nation Treaty Tribe. And below Quinault's usual and accustomed fishing areas, there are no adjudicated treaty fishing rights south of basically Westport. And so currently there are, there's a great deal of money being invested to establish an ocean fiber optic cable network that will install submarine cables from approximately the ocean shores area across the Pacific to various countries along the Pacific Rim. And so the Quinault fishermen are butting heads with the industry, I guess, pursuit, or those industry leaders who are trying to bring those cables to our fishing area, because we understand that there are existing federal laws that protect those types of cables, those undersea cables. And currently within the Quinault usual and accustomed fishing area, there are no fiber optic cables in the entire area. There are military cables, but we have a general understanding of where those are. We don't have a specific area. And so as the telecommunications industry has established itself along the Oregon coast, it's my understanding that there are agreements in place to avoid impacts to those cables. And by avoiding impacts to the cables, they're avoiding impacts to fishing gear and lost fishing opportunity. However, by avoiding those cables, there's also a situation where the fisherman himself is being excluded from his fishing area. And mind you, that is in Oregon, there are no treaty rights, but in Washington there are. And so the tribe, Quinault tribe is concerned about those particular treaty right impacts as a matter of, treaty law, that a constitutional property right of access to the fishing area is potentially being taken away by the installation of these cables. And also the protection of those cables under federal law requires these no fishing zones where, bottom contact fisheries cannot coexist. And so I just wonder, in Oregon or California, or in the future, maybe even in Washington, if there is continuing discussion of laying cables, whether they are power cables or telecommunication cables, fiber optic, whatever it is, what forums are available for the fishing industry and other user groups to participate in those discussions, including this one right here with offshore wind. And so again, like trying to piggyback off of the whole towboat lane conversation, I feel there are parallels there, but also just generally, like how can we expand that conversation or our interest in those particular subjects? Thanks.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, thanks for your clarification, Junior. I do have to say that the fiber optics are a little bit out of my jurisdiction in terms of my expertise and communication with the crabber towboat meeting for today. But what I will say is that BOEM always loves to solicit and continue to have conversations with tribes about any concerns. And if there's projects that happen, like you mentioned, in terms of laying cables, there will be meetings held. In terms of fishermen up and down the coast, BOEM over the past 2 years has had multiple different organizations as well as meetings with fishermen. So we try to publicize those on our websites, as well as going forwards, we're planning task force meetings, which are open to the public and are presumptively going to have some specific time for fishing. I don't know if I can directly answer your question about fiber optic cables, but any cable that is related to a BOEM project for power will have to go through our regulations as well as our consultations with the public.
Okay, thank you, Alden. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, Junior, I'm gonna connect you with Scott McMullen, who's familiar with Oregon cables. He's typically at this meeting, but he might have some names of forums that exist where you can talk more about that.
Okay, great, Jenna, thank you.
Okay, so we are 21 minutes over time. I'm not sure if Dale, you have another question, but before you do, I want to pick our next meeting date. I'm looking at Friday, November 3rd. Typically, we would do the second Friday of November, but that's Veterans Day again. So, barring any objections right this minute, I will plan for Friday, November 3rd. Okay. Great. Well, I think we should call it. It's been almost 3.5 hours. If anybody does have more questions for Alden, you have his email address, alden.lundy@boem.gov. So thank you so much to all of our presenters. I know this was long, but I think it was really productive. I am always open to feedback. If you liked lunch, tell me. We'll try to do it again. If this was way too long, tell me. So please give me your feedback if you'd like. I'll be sending out meeting minutes probably in the next week or so. So yeah, thanks for coming. Learned a lot. And Dale's got one thing to say.
I got one question for Alden. Do they have a specific BOEM person assigned to Washington at this time? I think they had one and they disappeared.
That was Ken, who was the one who gave this last presentation. So we're backfilling his position. We currently have our specialists covering California, Oregon, and Washington as the pair of them, Jean Thurston as well as Sarah Giltonan. I believe that Jen Miller is the name of record specialist for the state as of moment, but we are currently hiring and looking to fill those positions.
Okay.
And Jen Miller is the chief of the Pacific Renewable Energy section.
Great, thank you. Also, this meeting was recorded, so if you're interested in sharing this with a friend, let me know. But okay, thanks everybody online. Thanks for everyone in person. All right, take care.